Hey guys, Nathan here. So in case you missed it, a new music video I did with Problematic dropped this week and you can check it out down in the description. And I wanted to go over how I did the color grading for that music video. Now usually on this channel when I'm doing color grading, it's with Blackmagic Raw and 12-bit footage. But that's not what most people have. So today we're going to be grading some 8-bit footage from a Canon M50. But before we get into that, be sure to hit that like button down there and get subscribed for lots more videos like this. Anyway, let's get into it. So here we are on the color page of DaVinci Resolve 16, and everything I'm showing today can be done in the free version of DaVinci Resolve. So this music video is all done in one long continuous shot, and we have Problematic here in front of a blown out sky in the background. So to get things started, what we want to do is we want to balance our footage. So make sure we have white balance. Now there's a couple different ways you can go about doing this. You can see we have a number of things that would act as a good white reference point. So we could go and take our white eyedropper tool and select that, and we can confirm by taking a little power window, putting it over top of a part that's white, clicking our highlight, and now if we look at our waveform here, we want this to be perfectly white. So we can make little adjustments. That does a pretty good job. I also like to check it in the vector scope, and if it's perfectly white, it shouldn't really stray, you see, because now we're getting to kind of a blue area and you can see the line is rather blue. We want it to be pretty much bang on in the middle there. So that gives us a good idea of white. So we can just deselect our power window and now we do have something that's white. But let's say you don't have something that's white in the shot and you still want to get a good white balance. Well, if you have a skin tone in there, what you can do is we're just going to add a new node with Alt-S. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna draw a power window around the skin and then go into our highlight again. And you go to your vector scope, go in to your settings. I like to have it on 2x zoom just so it's bigger, so you can see a little bit more, and then you want your skin tone indicator on. And ideally, when balancing, your skin tone should be roughly on this line under normal situations. If you're dealing with lots of colored lights, things get different. But that's what we want to get, so we're pretty much on the line. If we want to make any adjustments, we could do something in the gamma here just to get us more bang on, but I'd say we're pretty close starting off. So going back to our first node, I'm just going to go back to the parade waveform so we have the brightness of each individual color channel. Now I want to start to set my exposure, so I'm going to start off by bumping up my contrast, and I will just note there's a ton of different ways to go about doing this, and then I want to do some exposure control in my wheels. So I'm going to bring down my offset to get me to a better point with my mid-tone. I want his skin to show up a little bit nicer, and then I'm going to bring down my lift a little bit because I want to crush certain parts of this shirt, but now I want to bring up that skin tone because personally I think that's way too dark. So we'll bump up the gamma a decent amount. Perfect. I think that's looking better so you can just see him more clearly. So time to address the elephant in the room is these highlights. I can bring down my gain. I can even go into my log controls, bring down my highlights, but nothing's going to bring back any detail in this sky because it is obviously blown out, which is fine. I mean, you're shooting with the Canon M50. It doesn't have a particularly large dynamic range. So this is the shot that Problematic wanted for the particular music video. And I think it actually works kind of nice to just have a pure white background and have him in the shot. So I'm not saying blow your highlights all the time, but I think there's some creative license there for sure. So to see your before and after, I'm just going to click Control D on the keyboard to disable and enable the node. Okay, so we're off to a decent start. Now I'm going to add a new node by hitting Alt-S. And what I want to do is I find that the sharpening within this camera is a little too intense for me. I'm not a big fan of it. So what I like to do is I like to go into my mid-tone detail and bring that down a decent amount. Just because, again, I find that digital sharpening in the Canon M50 is a little too much for me. So we can check it out before and after again with Control D. Just to bring down some of that sharpening. It's a little bit nicer on his face. Some of those sharp edges there with maybe his stubble. I find it's pleasing, but again, it's all your personal preference. So let's add a new node with Alt-S. And one thing I want to touch on real quick is when working with 8-bit footage, you want to avoid using qualifiers as much as you can. So the bit depth actually refers to how many colors are available. So I'll toss the numbers up for 8, 10, and 12, and it increases quite a bit. And as you can imagine, with less colors to pick from, qualifying becomes more difficult, and you're gonna grab more things that you maybe don't necessarily want. So if you want to make color specific changes, what I do recommend is going into our curves and go into our versus curves. So let's say, for example, if we wanted to adjust the skin tone, we could click on them here and make adjustments in this hue versus hue. But what I typically like to do is just go into a general color and make small adjustments in that way, but that is not necessary for this particular video, so we're just going to reset this node and get into the general look. So getting into the main look of the video, it's a very collaborative process between Problematic and myself, and you probably work out your own client dynamics, but it's not just specifically what I want, it's to fit what he has for a vision for the project. And this does change based on the scale of project. Now this particular video, he shot entirely by himself, but in something like Lie or Stay Wide Awake, where we had a crew of 10 plus people, it definitely has a different look that maybe is impacted by the director or the DOP. It just depends on the project. But in this case, everything was shot by Problematic. So he wanted kind of a moody look, but I decided to do kind of a cross process with the red channel, and I'll show you what I mean about that. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing this. I decided to go into the primary bars, and I'm just gonna bring down the red in my lift. So we get that cyan color. If we go crazy with it, this is what it looks like, but that's a little too chaotic for this project. So we're gonna park it right around 6 or 7 or so. And just for kicks, let's bring up our green a little bit in the lift. Now right off the bat, this is a look you could use, but this is not something I'm particularly interested in. With the cross process, what we're gonna do is go into our gamma and bring up the red to just try and bring back his skin tones. Maybe we'll bring a little bit of purple into the gamma, maybe a little less purple. Perfect. So now we have a general look kind of like this, and maybe we want a little bit more yellow in our gain, so we can definitely do that. Just to make it look like a fun, happy summer day. Yeah, that's nice. That's a pretty good start right there. So just to see the before and the after, we're gonna hit Control D so we can see what we've added. And one thing I want to address is I want to make sure that my blacks are black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my scopes and go down to waveform. And now there's a couple of reference black points. Like you could look at maybe these shadows or maybe this microphone stand. I'm going to go with the microphone stand based on our image here. The shadows are somewhere in here, but it's hard to tell what is black and what's supposed to be red based on this waveform. So I find picking an actually black object gives you a better reference point. So going into my log wheel, it just lets me control the lower end of my image. And I just want to play around with the colors, and I'm just getting it so that I get generally white in this area. Perfect. Yeah, that's definitely more white there. And now we're gonna bring down the low range. And what a low range is gonna do, let's just bump it up so I can show you kind of a difference. So you see we're affecting areas that are brighter in the image when we bring it up, but when we bring it all the way down, we're affecting the darkest areas of the image. So we'll park it right around like 140 or so, but it's whatever works for your particular shot. I think this works pretty good for mine. So right off the bat, I think we have something that's pretty good here. We can check the total before and after by pressing Alt-D on our keyboard. So this is where we started, and this is where we've kind of ended up. But just to add a little bit of special sauce onto this, I figured it needed something a little bit more. So I'm gonna add an effect on this video and just something kind of subtle. Now I like to add my effects in the beginning of my node tree in most cases. I do find this graphic from the Resolve reference manual is super helpful. Link to everything down in the description there. So to do that, we're gonna go back to our first node and we're gonna hit Shift S, and that adds a node before another node. So I'm gonna go into my open effects, and this can be done totally in the free version of Resolve. We're then gonna scroll down to Resolve FX Light and go into Lens Reflections. We're gonna toss that on, and boom, we've ruined our image, or we've gone full J.J. Abrams. But let's go a little less extreme with it. So going right up to the top here, I'm gonna bring down my global brightness a decent amount, And this isn't going to be a full tutorial on how to use this effect. If you want to see that, let me know down in the description and I can go way more in detail with it. I just want to cover how I used it in this particular shot just to add a little bit of extra, special sauce onto it. And just for that kind of look, I am going to up the anamorphism a little bit. It does exactly what it sounds like it does, just makes it kind of look like anamorphic lens reflections. Now, so it's going to stretch it out a little bit. And I'm going to go down, again, not covering all these things in this particular video. We're going to go down to our lens coding and we can adjust the color. Now you can pick the color yourself if you want, but I'm just going to go in and select blue. For this particular video, I did look at doing orange, but I found it just gave too much of a summer vibe. And I don't know, I wanted something that contrasted his skin a little bit, but that could have worked too, but it was just a little too much for me. So go with maybe blue and then just bring down our blend a bit. Perfect. Now we can see the before and the after on that. Now we could end it there, but I'm not a big fan of how much this does affect his skin tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my window and I'm going to grab just a circular window here. I'm then going to invert it and I'm just going to bring it over his face. We're going to scale it down a bit and bring out our softness. And now we're just going to stretch that just so it covers his face. Perfect. I like that. So now if we turn the window off and then on, you can definitely see a difference there. And then we can just turn this effect off and on. And it just adds a nice visual interest, and you can see the before and after the whole project if we hit Alt-D. So this is what we started with. We then did our balancing and exposure control with this node. We then brought down our mid-tone detail and then added our overall look to the piece. And then with that final special sauce, we just added these light reflections and boom, you get the final look for the latest problematic music video. So anyway, folks, I hope that helps you with color grading your projects, working with 8-bit footage, and also just trying to keep things simple because it's nice to have all those fancy tricks, but whenever you're working on lots of projects, just keep it simple, stupid. That's what I like to go back to. Anyway, if you like this video, be sure to hit that button and get subscribed for lots more videos like this. And as a fun fact, like 86% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, though we did just pass 700 subs. Thank you so much for that. But yeah, anyway, have yourself a good one. Okay, bye.